Hey, this is John Ridley.
And this is Matt Carey, Senior Documentary Editor at Deadline.com.
Matt, I feel like we have been apart nigh on forever, but somehow we've managed to get shows done. You've been almost literally around the world. You've been in Poland. Is that not correct? I don't mean to sound
right.
like I'm like a jilted lover trying to find out exactly where have you been the last few days. I will say that I have missed you terribly, but you have been around the world.
Separated us.
Well, that's why our relationship has lasted so long, Matt. People say, how do these guys stay together? How do they sound so fresh every time we hear? Because we miss each other when we miss each other when Matt's in Poland and I'm still sitting here in the silo, just away from humanity. But you have been around the world. You were in Poland. How was it?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It was still a little bit cool there in terms of the weather, but that was for Millennium Docs Against Gravity, which is the second biggest all-documentary festival in Europe, or that's how it describes itself, after IDFA. IDFA's the biggest.
Right.
So it's a huge festival, really, really wonderful people, a lot of world premieres, tremendous content there. And To Hold a Mountain, which won the top documentary prize at Sundance, also won the international prize at that festival. That's a really big win for that documentary. Yeah, absolutely. Those are two big wins for that film.
Yeah.
And I wish I could pronounce the names of the filmmakers, but I think I would be doing them a disservice if I even attempted that. But it's To Hold a Mountain. And then from there, that festival puts up right against Cannes. So toddled on over to the French Riviera and
wait, toddled on over to the French Riviera. That is that's a phrase. If I ever go back to writing novels, I promise you that's going to be the opening line.
When I think of Cannes, I still have the image in my mind of Cary Grant coming out of the Mediterranean in front of the Carlton Hotel and To Catch a Thief. I mean, just pure glamour.
Yeah.
And in that Hitchcock film with Grace Kelly. But anyway, I don't know why that image pops into my head. I did not do any swimming there, I will assure you.
That is it's classic. That's why your mind went to the classics. I'm curious. I'm sure there were many, many wonderful films. I have to be honest. I'm still slightly, just a tad, giddy after Guernsey, and I believe
Guernsey was there. Yeah,
premiered there. I hope that it got some love and affection.
Yes, that was a kind of a fun story about that. So Bruce Dern did indeed walk the red carpet with his daughter Laura Dern at his side. And so they went into the Palais where all the screenings are. And the protocol for, actually rather strict protocol for everything in Cannes, or maybe everything in France, I think, frankly. The French are very big on that. But generally speaking, Thierry Frémaux, as the head of the festival, introduced the film, and certainly one with such a prominent star involved as Bruce Dern. He's going to be there. And then they'll bring out the director, and then off you go with the screening. Well, a colleague of mine, Antonia Blythe, was at that premiere. I was at a different one happening at the same time about David Lean. And I heard back that Bruce kind of brushed the stage and got a 2-minute standing ovation before the film began. It just does not happen in Cannes. And
can we call that a Dernsey?
Oh, that is, you're right. That is the Dernsey.
Did Bruce Dern pull a Dernsey?
He pulled the Dernsey. He did indeed. And from what I was told, it's like Thierry had to sort of like gently tell him, Bruce, not now. And so anyway, he got a standing O. The film got, I think it was a 4, 5, 6 minute standing ovation afterwards, which is very long for a documentary. So it was very well received, and Dernsey was Dernsey. So that was clearly a great moment for him and for festival goers. And the festival, of course, in the Cannes Classics section in particular, really does pay homage to great figures in cinema, great filmmakers. I mentioned David Lean, a documentary about him premiered. That's really quite wonderful. It's called Maverick, The Epic Adventures of David Lean, of course, the director of many, many classics, including Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia, The Bridge on the River Kwai, A Passage to India, going way back to Great Expectations and some other films. So one of the great filmmakers. I think it was a really strong year for documentaries at Cannes. You know, we've discussed this, that I think almost everyone would agree, probably with the exception of Pierre Frémaux, that docs do not occupy the first rank at Cannes, and there were none in competition this year. So that's the first, or most prominent indication of the role they play there. However, there were still a lot of great documentaries, and they give out the L'Œil d'Or Prize, the Golden Eye, which is for the top documentary in the festival. And that was won by Rehearsals for a Revolution, which is by an Iranian-born filmmaker. I would struggle actually to pronounce her name, so I apologize. Pegah Ahargarani. I'm probably mispronouncing it, and I'm very sorry. I did get a chance to speak with her. Absolutely charming person, former actor who's become a filmmaker, really about the yearning for freedom in Iran. So a very, very timely documentary. A film called Tin Castle was given a special mention. I thought for sure some of the films I saw would win prizes, which just goes to show how challenging the competition was. I saw one that had premiered at Sundance and is just magnificent, called Once Upon a Time in Harlem. Oh my goodness, this is just really a glorious film.
Wow.
Being here with all these intelligentsias, I'm afraid to open my mouth.
Wait a minute, listen, Gene.
Could I say something?
It was a beautiful thing to expound your literary ideas. You know, they can be very important to you when they're yours.
Long in the making documentary. Most of the footage shot in the 1970s in Harlem at a party at Duke Ellington's place that really gathered all of the surviving members of the Harlem Renaissance who were still alive at that time. It's just a glorious film.
Wow.
That was so wonderful to see there. David Greaves, who's directed it, really based on his father's footage, William Greaves. He was there at the festival. I know it was very, very emotional for him to be there. That was a triumphant moment, got a huge reception. I saw a film called Les Survivants du Che, which is about Che being Che Guevara. I think the English language title is Che Guevara, The Last Companions, about guerrillas, men of arms who were at the side of Che Guevara as he made his ill-fated attempt to foment revolution in Bolivia, which resulted in his execution. But the filmmaker, French guy, remarkably tracked down the men who survived that attempt at revolution. Amazing story of how they got out of Bolivia when most of the guerrillas did not, and certainly Che did not. That was an amazing film, a film called Gabin, which is not about Jean Gabin, the actor. It's about Gabin, a young boy in France who his father's a butcher and he loves animals. So right there, you got a bit of a conflict. Anyway, lovely film.
And
there was
thank
lots to see and enjoy.
for disambiguating the the two in that, because I certainly, when I hear about one, I go to the other. Man, that sounds like you've seen a lot. And listen, we're about halfway through the year, so I'm going to have to start catching up. But they sound like some absolutely phenomenal documentaries.
So it was very rewarding. The Golden Globes people have started giving out a documentary prize. This is in association with the Artemis Rising Foundation. And that went to one of the, well, really to the filmmakers in the documentary filmmakers in the festival, in this case, the couple who directed Groundswell, which is about regenerative farming. Actually, Woody Harrelson and Demi Moore are executive producers and narrators of that. So that won the Golden Globes prize presented during the Cannes Film Festival. So there were some awards handed out, and just, to be in Cannes, I think, of course, is very exciting for any filmmaker, be they fiction or nonfiction.
It sounds like an amazing time. Again, I have never been, but from the films that were presented, the excitement, the energy that you described, it sounds like it was an absolutely amazing festival.
Yes, I would agree. It's sometimes I refer to Cannes as the worst festival you don't want to miss. By that meaning, you're going to go through some hard times in Cannes, and it may just being stuck in a crowd and not being able to move happens to everybody. So I'm being honest, there are moments of misery in Cannes. I mean, not that anyone should be shedding tears for me. On the other hand, then there are glorious moments, and you're on the Croisette in the south of France, and life is pretty darn good. And they're wonderful films. So
to go to a festival like that size, scope, and scale, you talk about the history, you talk about the memories. When you think of it, as you say, you think of the most rich history of cinema. So I can only imagine being in those crowds, and certainly the amount of people, the amount of security, and all those kinds of things that are also necessary. Can in some ways diminish some of the fun around the edges. But man, you are an excellent raconteur, Matt, and you tell the stories of being there and talking to folks, and it sounds intoxicating. I may have to add it to my bucket list of things to do. I'm still
exciting to be there
busily trying to get rejected from the Tokyo Film Festival again this year. So I think once I get a hard pass on that this year, I can start thinking about, can I get a hard pass from
that happen. We got to make that happen.
Festival next year? You know what, Matt? Though sometimes it's important to have, the regularity in your life and the certain things you can benchmark. And I know by August, Tokyo will have completely ignored me again.
Well,
listen,
I don't know. Hopefully,
what did you say? Cannes was the most difficult festival that you'll ever love.
Well,
the hardest thing that you'll ever go to and love. I think the Tokyo Film Festival is the thing that I'll never be there, but always, it's okay to yearn in life. It's okay to yearn.
It makes me think of Seinfeld. Where George is asked if he ever yearns. You yearn. Anyway,
what did
digress.
George say? Finish that thought, and then I'm going to show you how you didn't digress. You actually set me up.
Yeah, he. I don't think he said that he really yearned. I forget what words he offered as roughly synonymous, but they were more pedestrian. Yearning is a kind of lofty sort of thing, which one doesn't associate with George.
Now that you say that, though, I can see an entire episode being built around just George Costanza's sort of existential feelings towards something. And yearning is a very particular emotion, and it's a particular kind of person.
It is.
But let me ask you this, in the way of your brilliant transition that you didn't even know you were setting up. You mentioned George Costanza. That was in Seinfeld, one of the great comedies. Where I cannot recall off the top of my head, Matt, where in the world was Seinfeld set? Where in the world was Seinfeld set?
I think
New York City.
Not filmed there, but set.
Filmed over actually
CBS
the old MTM. Yeah, it used to be MTM, which takes us back to Mary Tyler Moore, which I found out the harshest way that nobody remembers who Mary Tyler Moore. Sadly, I'm not saying that in a good way. Heartbreaking. But now I digress. We were talking about one of the greatest cities on the planet, that is New York City. And we today are talking about what has stunningly, it's only been 25 years. And before we did this episode that we're going to talk about today, and I was reminded in the conversations that the film festival is only 25 years old. It's not that old, but it has really established itself as one of the preeminent film festivals in the world. a festival that was started 25 years ago by the absolutely legendary Robert De Niro, as well as one of the legendary producers in film, Jane Rosenthal. That is the Tribeca Film Festival.
Yes, about to get underway. It runs from June 3rd to the 14th. This is the 25th. Tribeca, as you mentioned. And we have the great good fortune to speak with Cara Cusumano, who is the festival director and senior vice president of programming for the festival. John, here now is our conversation with Cara Cusumano. We are really thrilled to welcome to the show Cara Cusumano, who is the festival director of Tribeca Festival and the senior vice president of programming. Welcome to Doc Talk.
Thanks so much for having me.
You have a huge festival, the 25th anniversary of Tribeca Festival, which opens on Wednesday, the 3rd of June. How are you feeling about it?
I feel really excited. We're ready. We're ready to go. We're crossing the T's, dotting the I's. I think it's going to be a great one.
Well, you certainly have an immense amount of documentary programming. You have programming of all kinds, fiction, nonfiction. You have episodic. Tribeca is certainly known for great talks and panel discussions. There'll be a number of those. Of course, on our show, we're going to drill down into the documentary lineup. And boy, there's a whole lot of it, and both in competition and in various other strands. And there's many that leap out to me, and hopefully we can talk about a lot of them. But you've got some that are certainly engaging with political topics, as one would expect. I noticed you have a world premiere of a documentary about Cuomo.
Yes,
and that would be Mario Cuomo, the late governor of New York, of course, and someone that many Democrats ardently wished would run for president, never quite happened. But so that's certainly a very prominent one, and I guess all of Mario's kids are in that film.
Yes, it's a really lovely documentary, and certainly interesting to look at from present day, and look at kind of just the tenor of politics in general, and the way that he presented himself on a national stage is really fascinating. I think politically, I found it interesting the sorts of films we saw this year and the story they were telling kind of came from a different angle. While Mario is a more straightforward, it's a documentary about a specific figure and a moment in time. We also have some political films I think are maybe a little more oblique in an interesting way, like a film like How to Feed a Dictator, that is about the personal chefs of very famous dictators, which almost sounds like a sort of gimmicky premise, but ends up being such a fascinating way to look at the wealth disparity and the conflicts in all these various countries throughout history, and the commonalities that they had, and obviously the sort of implications of the present day kind of write themselves. Or something like Playing POTUS, which is a documentary about comedians who impersonate the president or presidential politics. And it's really a documentary about political satire and how important that is, and how it has shaped what has actually happened in politics, going back decades. At the same time as it's really a joy to watch, just to see all of these comedians and their takes and talking about their process. So there's many more, but I feel like it was interesting to see the political docs this year being less sort of like topic A exploration, and more kind of finding a fresh angle to let the audience sort of come to their own conclusions.
Yeah, can I just ask a question about that? And I know things are cyclical in general, and obviously docs, they take time to arrive, but it's interesting that you say that you sort of get that feeling from the docs this year. Do you think that's in reaction to anything in particular? Not just in politics, but how do you explain politics in ways, as you say, are not just as cut and dry, whether it's through comedy, whether it's through dining? I find that really interesting. The storytelling maybe having to evolve in ways either narratively or in reaction to the politics that's going on.
Yeah. I mean, I can speculate. I think audiences are savvy, and filmmakers are savvy, and understand that to make a successful film, it has to be more than simply reportage or kind of statement of fact, and that as much as nonfiction filmmaking has, filled in a gap in journalism, it still is filmmaking and storytelling and, entertainment. And I've definitely felt the sense that some of these films have a message that they want to convey or explore in the context of a film that remains sort of fun to watch.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention about playing POTUS. I got to talk with the director, Josh Greenbaum, about that not too long ago. And of course, he directed the Will and Harper documentary with Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell,
Yes.
well known for playing George W. Bush and Strategery, I think.
Yeah. Well, and his piece of the documentary is so interesting, too, because he really is kind of reflecting on, I thought I was a comedian. I thought I was playing a part and building a character that I thought was fun, but did I make him too likable? Did I end up kind of shaping the way people perceived this very real figure through this, late night portrayal of him?
Yeah, and speaking of politics or people in politics or adjacent to politics, there's also Misrepresentation, Rise Up, which is directed by Jennifer Siebel Newsom, who is, I think she goes by the title of First Partner of California, married or partnered with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. And this is sort of an update of the documentary that she initially did 15 years ago that premiered at Sundance. It's a very important topic that she's exploring there. I know she's doing a talk afterwards that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is going to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, the original film is so strong and obviously not a finished conversation. These are issues that continue to evolve and change into the present day. So kind of continuing to look at, the role of social media and bullying, kind of bringing these, the conversation that she started with the first film more into the present. And then that is our hope with this conversation as well, to even continue that conversation beyond the film and into the room for the audience with some really incredible speakers.
One that I'm really excited about is the Lorraine, directed by Sam Pollard, who, of course, is one of the great filmmakers and long association with Spike Lee. He was also an executive producer on The Perfect Neighbor, which was Oscar nominated this year. And that's about the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, where, of course, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Was assassinated in 1968. So it sounds like really quite a fascinating look at the couple who own the motel.
Yeah, again, sort of telling a story that maybe historically or journalistically we're familiar with through a more personal take, taking the location itself, the story of this hotel and its long history beyond. It's famous for this one thing, but it was really central to the Black community in that area for a long time before and after. So telling a much broader, longer story about this place and a civil rights story and, through it, I think is a super, again, unique aspect to take on this story.
If I may ask also on that same tip, there are stories that we've seen and heard, and there are fresh ways of presenting those stories that we think we know. One that's being presented this year at your festival that I'm really excited about is one that explores the life of Basquiat, Jean-Michele Basquiat. There had been a previous documentary, Radiant Child, The Radiant Child, I believe it was Tamar Davis who did it, which is remarkable. It's a lot of found footage, but this is someone to this day, and I think he's arriving to the point where, he could buy his T-shirts and buy the sneakers, but people don't understand the young man who was behind this. So I'm very excited. And this film is actually, it involves the family, their participation. So I'm expecting to see some things and hear things that we probably have not heard before. Can you tell us a little bit about that documentary?
Yeah, it's a beautiful film, and similar to you, I feel like I thought this was a story I sort of knew. I've seen other films on him. He's such a part of kind of culture more broadly. I think people know the myth, but the film is unique for the participation of his sisters and this story of his childhood and his relationship with his family and kind of what they were going through with him during this meteoric rise and then tragedy. felt like something I had not ever seen before. And specifically thinking about New York and downtown New York and where Tribeca came from, having this kind of downtown artist story from fresh eyes felt like such a perfect fit for the festival this year. And even, thinking about Mario Cuomo, the way some of the doc programming this year, and specifically how we're talking about New York and the characters of New York, I feel like this was something that bubbled up on its own in a little bit of an unexpected way. But, we always have amazing, I think, local films. And this year to see that the documentaries about New York stories really tell the story of the city through its people and through these larger than life characters like Basquiat, like Cuomo. We have a doc on Robin Bird. We have a doc on George Whipple. We have a doc on Carmelo Anthony. We have a doc on Jocelyn Wildenstein. So I think it's just, it ends up being all these films in conversation with each other in the context of Tribeca on its 25th anniversary. I feel like it's saying something about New Yorkers in a really fun way.
And on that also, because there's something, you've talked around the 25th anniversary, we all have, and there's something that I completely forgot. And it's the origins of the Tribeca Film Festival, which I think are worth talking about in several contexts. One, this was a reaction to the attacks of September 11th and the effort to help a city heal, to try to bring economics back to a part of Manhattan that was just devastated after these attacks. And it's just very weird for me. 25 years later, I'm literally thinking, 25 years ago, let's see, our kids were being born, this and that, and didn't even think, it says something about human nature and also our ability to compartmentalize. But I would love for you to talk about that. I think there's also another film, if I'm correct, it's IXXI, that deals with some individuals. But also, I think it's worth saying, in an era, we've talked about the politics and political films where people are trying to diminish art and what art is really about and how it brings people together and how it's about economics and how it's about telling stories. I think it is worth you just talking about what this festival really means. And it's great that we can celebrate. And it's amazing the lineup you have, but remembering how it started and how important art really is to communities, and that New York, biggest city in America, it's still just a community of people.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. The first year of the festival, I was there as a attendee. I had just moved to New York. I was a teenager when 9/11 happened.
Wow.
And I feel like I remember it very vividly, the tone of the city for many, many months. And this was the first thing that was hopeful and joyful that was happening in the city. And it's Robert De Niro and Jane Rosenthal really they're producers and they're filmmakers and they're storytellers. And this was something that they felt they could give back to their community that was suffering. And, leveraging the power of film and that communal experience that going to the movies offers to bring people back together in a very literal way. So, they often talk about they didn't expect it would continue on past that first year. And here we are 25 years later. And I think it's testament to exactly what you're saying, that while that was very specific in 2002, it's also very evergreen, and that the role of a film festival for a local community and to bring storytellers together, to bring audiences together, to celebrate the theatrical movie-going experience is something that continues to be extremely valuable in New York City. And we saw it again when we went through COVID, and Tribeca again was really the first public event that happened in the city after the shutdown. We did an all outdoor festival in 2021 in order to be able to, do it safely. And it just felt like that was so in the DNA of where we came from, that this is what we do. We can give people something else to be excited about, and movies can do that. So yeah, it's great to be here at 25 and to be able to kind of high five everybody who was a part of it. But I do think it is lovely also to think back on how meaningful, and for me personally, how meaningful being a part of that was in that very first year.
Yeah, and then after COVID, the festival pivoted. It used to be in April, and then it pivoted to June, where it has remained since the pandemic. And I just wonder about that for you, of how that's changed the character of the festival, and what any advantages or perhaps disadvantages there are to being at that point in the calendar. Because I think for any festival, where you are within the year is the single most important thing about it in terms of the films you can get access to and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the decision to move to June was driven by the pandemic because, as I said, the only way to do it safely was outdoors. And April in New York is unpredictable. And maybe there's some rain. Maybe it still feels like winter. So we did it in June, and it was really successful. And there was it was a unique year, obviously, but we thought, let's keep this going and see how it feels in a sort of more regular year the following year. And I think being able to be outside is really incredible. We have a whole lineup of free screenings that we're doing outdoors this year of the sort of festival favorites from over the 25 years that are for the community that we're doing in Hudson Yards. So I think that there's been a ton of public interest in the festival in these dates. Certainly, wherever you are, there's going to be different what films are actually coming out in that window changes week to week. But I think it's advantageous that there's not, another major film festival moment. We're coming off of Cannes. Then there's a little bit of a lull until the fall starts to amp up again. There's other events, but it felt like there was a value that we could serve in this window versus in April, where there's a bit of a kind of rapid fire, a lot of different things happening all back to back.
One of the, of course, advantages Tribeca has in terms of what it can offer is New York City. Obviously many filmmakers, many prominent people, stars are based in New York City. And if they're not, they're probably willing to go to New York. Like, who wouldn't want to go to New York? And, to that end, I guess they mentioned you've always got some huge talks going on. For instance, one happening with Madonna that should be quite interesting, that I guess Jimmy Fallon is going to be the moderator for that. And you've got a number of documentaries that one might put into the celebrity category loosely, including one, Bob and David Climb Machu Picchu. And the Bob and David there are Bob Odenkirk and David Cross, who apparently did climb Machu Picchu.
As advertised. That is what happens in film.
Yeah, so that's going to be high profile. There's one, Chris and Martina, The Final Set. This is Chris Everett and Martina Navratilova.
It's actually funny you mentioned Bob and David and Chris and Martina together, because I feel like those two films kind of rhyme with each other in an unexpected way, where they're both the stories of these lifelong professional collaborations that have become lifelong friendships. And now we're looking, these people are at a certain point in their lives where they're really looking back on what all that meant from a point of kind of middle age. And it's about life and friendship and career. And I just think, yes, Bob and David, it's just a hangout movie. I think they wanted to go on vacation and they were like, let's make a documentary. And it's a delight. They're so much fun. And Chris and Martina, I think that as a sports film, it's incredibly compelling, but this added layer of the way that they were kind of pitted against each other, and this narrative was forced on them about their rivalry that wasn't at all authentic to their experience, and they've been able to overcome that in their lives and are now quite close friends. Is great. It's just a really beautiful story. And yes, they'll all be there.
Oh, all right. Fantastic. That's very exciting.
I wanted to talk about, and I hope you have insight to this. I assume from your title you do. Tribeca, I look at the lineup, I look at the ways that it's grown in terms of its representation, the kinds of people who are showing up, the kinds of films that you get, as well as these performances. Tribeca, I also feel, has been very good about at least acknowledging other ways to entertain or for audiences to engage in new technologies. So in the early days of VR and things like that, you were accepting of, bringing people in and letting experience. I actually went down to the festival and got a tour of some VR content. And I see that also in podcasts, which I'm interested in because I know some people who do podcasts. So I am interested in that in general, but I also, and I really sincerely do not mean to put you on a spot with this question, but I'm curious both as an organization that is interested in how we speak to each other next, as well as an organization that is clearly so honorific of the traditions of cinema and storytelling, and as you say, the communal experience. For you looking at AI, in what ways are you interested in demystifying it for audiences and saying, look, to a degree, it's a tool, and like any tool, whether it's Final Draft or Fire, it's how we use it. And in what ways are you saying to artists, hey, we respect what you can do and do in camera and want to support that as well? Again, not trying to put you on the spot, but just acknowledging that Tribeca does, in my opinion, has done a really, really good job of saying, look, there are things out there. Let's not be afraid of them. Let's understand them.
Yeah, 100%. I think, it goes back to how the festival is conceptualized at the very beginning, which I think really was as a storytelling festival, and that, film is the bedrock of that and how it started. But over the years, we've grown so much into, first it was TV and then immersive, more recently podcasts and games and content creators, which is relatively new. I think maybe a function of, we are 25 now, but I think that still makes us one of the younger festivals and has afforded a certain nimbleness in terms of defining things, that we have that flexibility to say all of this is of a piece. This is all kind of an independent storytelling impulse that we want to celebrate, and we want to put all of these kinds of creators in conversation with each other. And I think that was a great asset and remains a great asset of Tribeca, and has never been particularly controversial until AI has been, I think a con that people don't want to cross. So, I think maybe we have kept a little more of a ambivalent or open door policy about like, well, let's hear it out. Let's see,
right,
what these tools look like in the hands of filmmakers, or how this can really be an asset. If it can be, I think it's very much an open question, but I don't know that it benefits filmmakers to just refuse to have that conversation at all.
Yeah.
And there was a documentary about AI. AI, probably nothing to worry about.
Great title.
Probably. That's reassuring.
It's great. It's like, it's the history of AI, from sort of its initial conceptualizations all the way through to everything that's happening today. But the way that it's told is like a techno thriller. And I feel like, even though I know the sort of story beats of, this all played out very publicly. We know what happened with Elon Musk and with Sam Altman and where we're at, but to sort of in the hands of a storyteller who's telling a genre film almost, it's really absorbing.
I'm looking at the lineup of music performers as well. And from
big time
Earth, Wind, just alone having Ahmir Questlove present a documentary about Earth, Wind, and Fire, and then to have a performance by Earth, Wind, and Fire and the Roots, that alone is enough to fill. You can call that a festival in and of itself. But to have everyone, Mumford and Sons, Peter Frampton, who I personally can never get enough of, Alicia Keys. Genuinely speaking, when you start to get to that wattage, how do you manage? And I don't mean manage personalities, because we've had the opportunity to talk to many of these folks, and they're team players and they're artists, and I know they want to be there to present their work. But when it starts to expand, and it's like the sun expanding, how do you truly program that? How do you look at that? Say we're going to fit Peter Frampton and Earth, Wind, and Fire. And by the way, I'm the person who's buying the tickets to all of those. But it really, how you pull all this off is really spectacular. And you can take as much credit for that if you want to compliment your team. And God knows it takes a village and a team to put it all together. But it's really extraordinary when you go through these names. And may I ask also, because you do such an amazing job, you talked about some of the first-time filmmakers and the people that you're bringing in. And that, to me, is also remarkable, that you're preserving these spaces. It doesn't matter what you've done before. It doesn't matter how fresh you are. Like you say, you're 25 and nimble and still young. I'm just curious about what goes into that balance of putting together, just a spectacular lineup of all kinds of folks from all kinds of disciplines.
Yeah, I think it's of a piece still with the idea that we're a storytelling festival, and that music and musicians are another form of artistry that makes sense logically with the community that we're bringing together here. And certainly as we've grown the music program at the festival, it gets easier because more people say, well, Taylor Swift did it last year and Miley Cyrus did it last year. So now Katy Perry and Madonna want to do it this year. So that helps to kind of build on the momentum. But I think it is also building each event one at a time. And how do you make the best experience for what this film is and for that audience in that room? Because again, I feel a lot of protectiveness of, at the end of the day, we're a brick and mortar live physical experience for an audience. And taking the Earth, Wind and Fire example, I mean, it's very much, Questlove's vision and pitch for what this could be. But to show that, not just premiere the film, but then to have Earth, Wind and Fire performing with the Roots afterwards, this is not something that exists. This is not something you can buy a ticket to that goes on tour. This is a unique experience for this film to celebrate this incredible special moment. And audiences are being invited into that room to hopefully have a transcendent experience. So I think as we see each film, it's really about, how can we do the best possible event for you? And is it bringing that experience to life on stage somehow afterwards with musical performances that makes a lot of logical sense? And the ones that we've seen, that we've executed at the festival, have been so powerful because often these artists are experiencing that film about their life for the first time in that room alongside that audience, and then getting up on stage and giving a performance. They can be so emotional and really, really unique. And that's part of, I think, what our job is as a festival, is to give that experience to people.
John mentioned Jean-Michele, the documentary about Jean-Michel Basquiat, and that is playing in competition. That is that film is directed by Quinn Whitney Wilson and Veridiana Lieberman. Veridiana edited The Perfect Neighbor in rather spectacular fashion, I might add. Yeah. So very, very talented. And so I wanted to ask Cara about other films in competitions. We can't go through all of them, unfortunately, but are there any that you would like to highlight in competition?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun, fascinating spectrum because we do US and international docs together. And, some are from new directors, some are from more established directors. Really is just trying to represent a spectrum of what we think is the strongest filmmaking that we've seen that we can premiere for the first time. I think Retrieval is really fascinating. It's a documentary about sort of the cutting edge science of sperm retrieval from people who have recently passed away. So basically people who lose their spouse very suddenly, typically in an accident, are then able to retrieve sperm, and they can decide if they want to continue their family. And it ends up, it's about the science, but it's also really about family and grief. And you see these characters going through a lot of really complicated emotions that, you wouldn't have even thought to think about, which I think a great documentary always kind of brings you into a world like that. It's extremely moving. I think Kids Like Me is a delight. It's about a teenage boy named Oliver who has disabilities, and he is obsessed with murder mysteries, specifically Monk. And he has like a monk backpack that he wears to school. And so it's about his life, and he's sort of he's a larger than life character, and really a bit of a I don't know, like he's a little saucy, let's say. And so he's fun to watch on screen. And
that's a word we don't hear often enough.
Now you've got me.
I'm so excited to meet him, and I think he's gonna really bring a lot of fun vibes to the festival. But it's about his life and the challenges that he has just on a day-to-day basis, but also this incredible community around him, his family, the filmmaking team, and they come together to make his dream come true of making his own detective film. So you used to have this sort of like making movie within a movie that's also happening, and it's extremely heartwarming. So those are a couple of my favorites. I do love the Jean-Michel doc. I think Gymnast of Fisherman Calamir is really excellent. It's executive produced by Mariska Hargitay, and it's
I was going to say friend of the show, very talented Mariska Hargitay.
And we had her feature directorial debut last year, and we've had her as a producer before. But about young girls living in Pakistan whose lives are somewhat kind of predetermined by where they're at, and they start to join a gymnastics club, and this way that this plays out is, they start to see this as a path out, and it may or may not be, depending on sort of how you see the film and which character you're looking at. So again, just a really touching look at girlhood, and specifically girlhood in this part of the world.
Mm. Yeah, and just to mention a couple of others that are in competition, Time Warp, which sounds very intriguing because it's about a production of the Rocky, as I understand it, production of the Rocky Horror Picture Show in Rock Springs, Wyoming, which is not where I would imagine that show going over tremendously well, a rather conservative state, directed by Allison Berg, and Josh Gad is one of the executive producers. So that sounds very intriguing. And The Siege of Paradise, which is by an Irish filmmaker, Gar O'Rourke, about, I guess, a town or area of Italy that is overwhelmed with tourists, which is actually becoming kind of a big international issue of, these towns and entire countries, I think, that are just flooded with tourists. Too much of a good thing, I guess. And so there's much to experience just in competition alone. But as we've been discussing, we have not talked about by any means all the films, all the documentaries in the festival. And of course, we're not even touching on the fictional fair. So it is an extraordinary lineup for the 25th edition of Tribeca Festival. We wish you, Cara Cusumano, all success in pulling off this major endeavor. I know there's going to be a talk with Jane Rosenthal and Robert De Niro on the 25th. So that's going to be a major event and highlight. And hope you get a little bit of rest before all the excitement begins, because you probably won't during the festival.
Never. I'll sleep in July.
Well, thank you again, Cara, and it's been great having you on the show.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you there.
Matt, look, New York, it is the Big Apple. It's got something for everybody. And I think that's really reflected in the Tribeca Festival. It sounds not only deep and rich in terms of the films, and as you mentioned in our conversation with Cara, we're only talking about the docs. We have not talked about
That's right.
The narrative films. They have episodic content, short form content, obviously a big music component. So the festival continues to grow. Something for everybody coming out of that festival.
Yeah, it's a very, very wide range of programming. And as Cara explained, in competition, certainly films from around the world. But and you got into it. I'm really glad you highlighted some of the music documentaries there, because I think of festivals that highlight music. Certainly South by Southwest premieres a lot of music-related documentaries, but typically Tribeca will open with a documentary, usually music-related. For instance, a number of years ago, The Apollo, which was directed by Roger Ross Williams about the Great Apollo Theater, that premiered Tribeca a number of years ago. This year, it is the Questlove documentary about Earth, Wind, and Fire, and then the closing night film that you alluded to about Alicia Keys.
Yeah.
So they got a huge amount of music docs alone. So very, very exciting programming.
Yeah, and I think, look, I as much as you and I think love really insightful and artful docs, when you're talking about a festival, and we know how challenged it can be, music is and by the way, you're going from Alicia Keys, Earth, Wind, and Fire, as mentioned. Peter Frampton is going to be there. So it's not just like, hey, let's get the kids in. It's like, let's really try to move people and get some emotion and things going like that. So it's remarkable. It's wonderful. And I think for folks who have the opportunity to get there and go there, it's going to be terrific. Listen, we talked at the top of the show about the Cannes Film Festival, and we certainly don't want to give that short shrift either. And I believe we've got some content that you recorded while you were, what did you say? Shuffling over to the...
Toddling over to the Riviera.
So I hope while you were doing your toddle in your tuxedo and with the martini glass, Matt Carey, that you maybe toddled as well. I had the opportunity to talk with some filmmakers, and for those of us who didn't get to go, get to pretend we went by hearing some terrific conversations.
Yes, and I did toddle a little bit further west beyond the French Riviera. I toddled all the way over to Madrid.
Wow.
I'd never been to Madrid before. That was very exciting. And I went there to speak with Rafael Nadal, of course, the great tennis champion, the king of clay, winner of 22 Grand Slams. There's a new documentary about him, 4-part documentary series.
Wow.
Directed by Zach Heinzerling, called Rafa, that has just premiered a couple of days ago on Netflix. And so we're going to share the interview that I did with Rafa and a little bit of my talk with Zach Heinzerling in Madrid. So that was pretty darn exciting. I did not have
secrets from me. I didn't know you've been to Madrid. And then it's, oh my God, it's always, and then this amazing singular individual I was hanging out with.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing more exciting for me, and it would not have been for Rafa, is if we could be on a court. And what would be exciting for me is, like, could I actually even hit one ball back? Could I get one ball that he hit to me over the net? And maybe it would happen 1 out of 100 if I was lucky.
Can I just say this, though, just to give you some solace, is better players than you have not returned.
Oh, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point.
To miss actually puts you in probably the top 1% of people who've ever had the opportunity to play tennis in their entire lives.
So what you're telling me is I could be ranked. I could be.
I say this about Deshaun Watson getting a unrestricted deal. I can throw interceptions. So if you just want to give money to the absolute wrong human being, I'm saying your situation is a little different. But yes, I'm just saying that there are some times you could say, yeah, I could be in the same category as an amazing human being like Deshaun Watson. I think your category is certainly much better. But yes, that's a way of looking at it, sir.
That would be fun. Anyway, that's going to be on our next episode of Doc Talk. And hopefully in that episode, we'll be able to share some other interviews I did in Cannes. So that's what's coming up next week.
It sounds good. Matt, always great to have you back. Thank you so much for your travels. An amazing episode. Looking forward to next week's episode. And as always, thanks to everybody in our team for putting the show together. And thanks to everybody for joining and listening. That's going to do it for us. Thanks very much. We'll see you again next week on Doc Talk.